The manifest listed him as Cargo Class Omega, Restricted, Vorath Battle-Hound, 1 unit bonded null, no handler on file. The relay station's transit coordinator, a 4-armed Vrethian in a gray administrative vest, had handed me the transfer packet without making eye contact, and then stepped back approximately 2 meters and stayed there. I signed the packet. Sable shifted in the carrier on my shoulder, yawned once, and went back to sleep. "Is that your animal?" the coordinator asked. "He comes with me on every job," I said. She looked at the carrier, she looked at me, she did not say anything else. "My name is Dara Wenn. I have been moving animals for 11 years, everything from Vorath sandcrawlers to decommissioned military K-9 units to, twice now, creatures with their own threat classification tier in the Coalition Registry. The Vorath Battle-Hound in Bay 14 was the largest living thing I had ever been contracted to move. His name, per the intake sheet, was not listed. His weight was 460 kilograms. His last bonded handler had retired due to, and I am quoting the paperwork here, cumulative threat proximity stress response, which is what the Coalition writes when they mean the handler had stopped sleeping. I had a Maine Coon named Sable who weighed 6.4 kilograms, and had once sat on a Vrethian ambassador's classified briefing documents for 45 minutes without moving, and the ambassador had been afraid to reach past him to retrieve them. So I felt we were prepared. Bay 14 was at the end of a decommissioned transit arm, 300 meters of maglock corridor, no windows, low amber emergency lighting because the hound species was photosensitive, and the relay station had made exactly one accommodation. The enclosure was a reinforced transit cage, floor-bolted, with a restraint collar synced to the bay's containment grid. The hound was sitting in the back left corner when I came in. He was the color of old charcoal, 6-limbed, with a head that was mostly jaw. His eyes were the pale amber of something that had spent a long time looking at dark things. He looked at me. I looked at him. Sable, still in the carrier, made the small churring sound he makes when he is comfortable. The hound's ears, 2 of the 4, the forward-set pair, rotated toward the carrier. "All right," I said, mostly to myself. I set my kit bag down and started the pre-transit checklist. The collar was the problem. It was a Vorath-manufactured restraint unit, rated to Class 9 tensile resistance, which had seemed sufficient when the spec sheet was written, and perhaps still was, technically, except that the hound had been sitting in that corner for 6 days and was not, I suspected, in a particularly cooperative mood. The collar's maglock interface required a physical sync from inside the enclosure. That meant I had to go in. The transit coordinator had told me, when I'd asked about the sync procedure, that the standard protocol was a 2-handler entry with a barrier pole and a sedation lance. She had said this in the tone of someone describing something she had no intention of personally doing. I told her I'd manage. I opened the enclosure gate. The hound did not move. He watched me cross the 12 feet of bare floor to the collar interface panel with the stillness of something that has already calculated whether a thing is worth the effort and has not yet returned a verdict. I crouched in front of the panel. The sync took 90 seconds. I ran it. He let me. I stood up, checked the restraint reading nominal, collar locked to transit mode, tension alert set, and walked back to the gate. I was 3 steps from it when the alert tone sounded. Not the tension alert. The collar's power cell. A flat, procedural double beep that the spec sheet, which I had read twice on the transit in, described as indicating imminent magnetic lock failure due to extended low-power operation. 6 days in that corner, nobody had charged the cell. I had approximately 4 seconds. I stepped through the gate, pulled it shut behind me on instinct, and turned around. The collar disengaged with a sound like a heavy lock tumbling open. It dropped to the floor of the enclosure. The hound stood up. 460 kilograms. 6 limbs. He filled the back of that enclosure the way water fills a container completely, with no wasted space. His head came up, and the pale amber eyes found me through the reinforced mesh and then, very slowly, moved to the carrier on my shoulder. I heard the corridor behind me. The transit coordinator had apparently been monitoring the bay feed, because there were boots on the maglock floor, and someone was saying something in rapid Vrethian that I did not need to translate to understand the gist of. "Nobody move," I said. I said it to Sable specifically, because Sable had woken up and was looking through the mesh panel of his carrier, with the expression he uses when something has caught his attention. Chin slightly forward, pupils at a precise working width, ears angled like two small radar dishes at the enclosure. The hound crossed the enclosure in 2 strides and pressed his jaw against the mesh of the gate. He was 18 inches from Sable. Sable looked at him. The hound made a sound I had not heard before and have not heard since, low, below the threshold you feel in your chest rather than hear with your ears, and short. One pulse of it, then nothing. Sable blinked slowly, the way cats do when they are at ease. The hound sat down. Not a threat posture, not a crouch. He sat the way a dog sits when it has arrived somewhere it intended to be, weight back on his haunches, head level, eyes still on Sable. His breathing was audible but even. The restraint collar was on the floor 6 feet behind him, and he gave it no attention whatsoever. I became aware that the corridor behind me had gone very quiet. I did not turn around. I unzipped the top panel of Sable's carrier slowly, and Sable stepped onto my shoulder with the composure of a cat who has never once in his life considered that a situation might not resolve in his favor. He sat on my shoulder. He looked at the hound. The hound looked back. I have been moving animals for 11 years, and I do not pretend to understand everything that passes between them. What I can tell you is that nothing moved for a long time, and then Sable began to purr, and the hound laid his chin on top of the gate's lower crossbar and closed his eyes. I reached into my kit bag, found a replacement power cell for the collar. I carry 2, as a matter of professional habit, and called back to the corridor that I was going to need someone to pass me the charging dock. It took a moment. Then a 4-armed gray sleeve appeared around the frame of the bay door and set the dock on the floor and withdrew. I recharged the collar. I re-entered the enclosure, which the hound permitted. I resynced the lock. The hound stood still for this, chin raised, watching Sable the entire time. The transfer to the sanctuary facility took another 4 hours. The hound rode in the transit container without incident. Sable rode in his carrier. At one point between the relay station and the sanctuary's approach corridor, I heard the hound make that sound again, the low subsonic pulse, and heard, very clearly, Sable answer it. The sanctuary's intake coordinator was a compact, gray-scaled Kethvari woman who had been handling apex-class animals for what she told me was 30 years. She reviewed my transfer documentation with the efficiency of someone who had seen everything. Then she looked at the hound, who had sat down again the moment Sable came into his line of sight. "What did you use for the collar resync?" she asked. "Replacement cell from my kit, standard procedure." The previous 3 handler requested full sedation for any approach within 4 meters. "I had Sable," I said. She looked at the carrier. She wrote something in her intake log. She did not ask me to explain further. The relay station filed the bay incident as a voluntary compliance event, which is what their system generates when a containment breach resolves without intervention. The form has a field for contributing factors. The coordinator, to her credit, filled it inaccurately. She wrote, "Civilian handler, 1 Earth origin domestic cat, Maine Coon, male, unneutered, gray-black, weighed approximately 6 kilograms. The hound's reclassification review opened the following week. I was not party to it. I heard, through the sanctuary coordinator, that the reviewing board had spent some time on the bay footage. specifically on the 18 seconds between collar failure and the hound sitting down, and that the lead assessor had requested a copy of the footage for what she described as ongoing research into apex behavioral thresholds. I do not know what conclusion they reached. I know that Sable slept the entire transport home, chin on my knee, the way he always does when a job has gone the way he expected.